there's so many agents now that are like, all right, where's my next lead coming from? I'm like, well, what are you doing to get them? Like, you have to actively be doing something. So I know that you guys listening are like looking for a secret.
Welcome back. We are here for another episode of the Business Workshop. We have a great guest today. So, what led me to this guest was I recently became licensed in Florida. For everybody who doesn't know, my 5-year plan for my family is we wanted to move out of New York and be stationed more in Florida, coming back and forth to New York rather than what we're doing now, going from New York back to Florida. My wife hates the cold weather anymore. And honestly, I'm over the snow removal as well. So, honestly, going back and forth to Florida, honestly, it's just I don't know if it's a slower pace of life because obviously people say like you go there to die or whatever, but it's just the people are just so much happier. You go down there, I don't know if it's the sun is always shining, whatever it is. The people actually just say hi to you when you walk into a store. It's a beautiful thing. Our guest today is a New York realtor who moved to Florida, if I recall correctly, is licensed in both states, goes back and forth, has a team here in New York as well. So we had a lot of similarities, and I figured this is a great person to pick their brain and give other people some knowledge as well at the same time, because I know everybody nowadays is looking to get dual licensed or move out of state, and what better person to speak to than Grace herself.
Well, thank you so much for that nice introduction. I'm
Thank you
so
for
happy
taking
to
the
be
time.
here. Yeah,
No,
no problem.
thank you so much for taking the time. Are you in Florida now, or are you in New York today?
No, now I'm in New York. I'm here for the next couple weeks and then I'm going back.
Beautiful. Well, beautiful, maybe not.
I have to say, this week it's been more humid here than it has been in Florida, which was shocking to me. I'm like forgetting where I came from a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Florida last week and it was like 98, whatever. It was hot, don't get me wrong, but it really wasn't humid. And then here it was just like you get just smacked in the face with it and you're like,
Yeah,
miserable.
yeah, it's
For,
hot.
for the people that don't know you, give us your elevator pitch of who you are, what you did maybe before real estate, and what you're, up to now.
So I actually first got into real estate. I started as a personal assistant for a real estate broker. I was in college. I wasn't interested in getting licensed at the time. I kind of just wanted to live my best life a little bit and like play around with different things and see what I was interested in. So I also was a marketing director. Was an interior designer. So everything I was doing kind of did lead to me eventually getting my license because those are things that are definitely applicable to the business. I was working in the New York Design Center in Manhattan when I got laid off during COVID. So that's when I officially got my real estate license. I was like, all right, I already know what to do. I've been watching the business for the last like 5, 6 years as an assistant. So I was able to just get started. I mean, the market was hot. I knew a lot when I got licensed. So I did about 10 million my first year in the business, my second year in the business. I switched companies. I started a team. And now we have about 8 agents under our team. This is my third year. I expanded to Florida, and now I'm dually licensed, and I still have my team in New York.
All right, so that was a boatload to take in right there. So I'm gonna wind it back.
Sorry.
I'm gonna wind it back. So obviously you did $10 million your first year, you said, right? So
Yeah.
for everybody that is listening to this, that's pretty much unheard of usually for most realtors their first year. Obviously you had a lot of experience being as an assistant. I'm sure that played a big role into helping. But what did you do that you were able to skyrocket? Like, I mean, if you think about it, if that was a $5,000 average sale, you're talking that's 20 transactions, give or take, your first year, which is
Yeah.
honestly ridiculous.
Well, thank you. I did start on a team. So, like, my first 6 months in the business, I was on a team and I was really just learning everything. And honestly, I didn't close my first deal for the first like 5 months that I had my license. So that 10 million was really only half the year. But I was just like grinding and getting things under contract. And I never stopped to like calculate commission or like look at how much I had pending. I just kept looking for the next sale. And I was just willing to do everything. I was willing to go door knocking and host open houses for my team lead. And like, I just really focused in on like, all right, if I want to do well and replace my full-time salary that I was making, there's only one way to do that. Like, there's no secret. Like, it's just you have to do the work. Like, there's so many agents now that are like, all right, where's my next lead coming from? I'm like, well, what are you doing to get them? Like, you have to actively be doing something. So I know that you guys listening are like looking for a secret, but there I don't feel like there is one. I'm sorry. You just have to hustle.
It's so true. Everybody, people that come into the business right away, like they want that instant satisfaction. They see these TV shows and they see all this, all the lights and the cameras, and they're like, oh, I sell this house, I make a quick 20, 30, 40, $50,000. I'm like, that's like imaginary. It's not
Yeah.
real. All
No.
these shows are probably the worst things that ever happened because they made everybody go get their license, and then they realized, oh, the failure rate is what, 80, 90%, because they just like, I can't do
Yeah.
this.
Listen, it is not for the faint of heart. Like, you have to be super resilient. And I have lost like $30,000 in 1 month. I had two big deals fall through back to back, but then you can't sit on that. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to keep pushing and like, all right, shit happens. Those fell through. Like, we're moving on to the next thing. Like, I know it looks so glamorous on like these shows and on Instagram. There's so much more that goes on behind the scenes that like if you don't have that resiliency to pull yourself out and move on, like you're going to be stuck in that rut. And I think that's the issue most agents have is not even like if they're good at it or know what they're doing. It's more of the emotional background. Like you have to be able to manage that yourself. Otherwise, you get stuck in that rut and you're like, forget it, I'm quitting. And then most agents just stop there when something bad happens.
Yeah, and to me, like what I've seen lately, obviously, especially like when we're always having like our team huddles and going over things, and it's like just being able to have them stay on top of leads. Like everybody wants the money now; they want to put that deal under contract now, but it's all about just building that pipeline for 6 months out, a year out, 18
Yeah.
months, 2 years, and like staying top of mind with these people. Either if it's reaching out through phone calls during holidays or direct mail, emails, or combination of everything, right? It's people don't realize like this is a transactional basis, but you're building relationships. It's all about keeping that momentum going, like you said. And if you're not doing these type of things, you're eventually your pipeline is going to dry up, and then you're running around fighting for another commission check instead of like doing the right thing, which is building the relationships with which then leads to these transactions.
Yeah.
You're fighting for your next deal.
Yeah. No, I tell my team that all the time. We just had a situation where we were working with a buyer and thought we'd built that relationship that could have been nurtured like a little bit more, but it was a very short time frame. And then they wound up going under contract with a builder. They went directly to the builder. But like because we were still answering the phone and helping guide them through that process, that deal actually fell through. They came back to us. And
Wow.
then now we're under contract for a house for 1.3 and are listing their house tomorrow for 900. So if like most agents would have been like, screw this, like they went somewhere else. They didn't want to work with me. Like it's not ego driven. Like I genuinely appreciated that relationship and they trusted me. They just trusted us and they appreciated that because now it didn't look like we were just in it for a commission check. Like we were there to help them whether or not we were making that check. And that's what made the difference. Like most agents just would have stopped answering the phone at that point because they weren't getting paid on that deal. So it's little things like that that really make a big, big difference.
Everything worked out on that deal, right? Thankfully, the right things happened. I used to go back and forth about this when I first got into the business. I've been in the business now for about 6 years. And when I first started out, my first, say, 2 years, maybe 3 years, I would hear different sides of things back and forth. Do you have buyers sign a buyer broker agreement? So
I
you
knew
say,
you
like,
were going to
I'm your
ask
client.
this.
So, it's a question I always find intriguing, like what people think about it. So for me, I was never the person that I understand the reason behind it.
Yeah.
And I understand that you want that client to feel like, listen, like I'm going to put, all my effort and time into you, like, and we don't get paid until we close that transaction for you.
Yeah.
So I don't want you to all of a sudden go to an open house and say, oh, I'm not working with Josh anymore because I think I could get a better deal. Or one of these realtors try to be shady, and which a lot of them do, unfortunately, and be like,
Yeah.
oh, I can help you out. I can get you an accepted offer because they want to try to double end the deal or whatever the case may be. But I never wanted someone to feel like they were locked into me. Like I wanted them to work with me because they liked me or they saw the value in me rather than, oh, I signed a piece of paper. Now I'm like committed to you. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like, have you ever thought about doing that? Because whenever I lost a deal,
Yeah.
I always thought about this. And I'm like, and then I still never did it anyway, but I was always curious.
Honestly, I spoke to my team about it. I was like, "Listen, I'm going to present this to you. And if you feel like you want to prevent this from ever happening and get your buyer agreement signed, That's you. Do it. But I don't do it. And listen, I've lost deals because of it. Honestly, this was the only one I lost because of that, and then they came back. But I really just build these genuine relationships, and I'm so on top of these people that 99% of the time, like they don't even have time to go to anyone else because I'm working diligently. Like I'm working with them every weekend. If I'm not available, my showing agent is with them or someone on my team. Like they're always with someone that's working with me. Every showing, I call them right after. If I'm not there, I'm like, what happened? What's the feedback? How did it, like, I'm sending properties as soon as they go on. So, like, why would they need to go to somebody else if I'm doing all of these things? And then they feel loyal to me because I've done all this work. They know how much work I've done. It's never a question of like, is she actually working hard for me?
Right.
Like that's when I think you run into issues. But that's just my opinion. It's controversial. I know every broker will be like, get those buyer agreement signs. But I feel like when you present it, it's also the way you present it. And like, listen, there are ways to do it. And in times it makes sense in certain scenarios. But most of the time, it's like the way they teach you to present this form is, I have multiple clients and I can't devote 100% of my time to you unless you sign this because other clients did. And that pisses me off because, like, you should be giving every client 100% of your time, whether or not they sign this agreement with you, because you're agreeing to working with them. Like, you're having a verbal agreement and you should be working diligently regardless. So I don't
Agree.
like getting it signed because to me, it doesn't make a difference if that client signed that form or not.
I agree. And my big thing was if okay, I have the signed. You're my client. I have the signed with you. You go out and you go buy this house with the builder. The only
Hmm.
way I get paid is if I go and literally sue you.
Right.
So like,
And then,
am I
like, where do you go from there? Like, now
like,
you ruin that relationship forever.
like
So,
am I gonna not like it tarnishes my name, but okay, they start. Nowadays everything's social media. They go out, they start blasting your name. This guy tried. This realtor tried to sue me. Whatever the case may be. Like you're really gonna risk relationships, or maybe they end up referring you down the line. They say, hey, listen, I just want to stay in contact with you, whatever. They refer you out a listing maybe down the road, whatever it may be, and you're going to risk losing all these opportunities and maybe getting bad mouthed, etc. For what, a $20,000 commission or something of that nature?
right,
You're like, is it really going to
right.
make or break you at that point? So to me, I'm like, I'm going to get this signed, but I'm never really going to enforce it anyway. So it's really just for them to think like they're under contract with me. I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
It kind of didn't make sense.
I've done that before. I had someone sign it and then I looked at it and I was like, why did I do that? Like I just don't like anything that this form says. Like it's just not for me and it's just not the way I do business, but no shade to anyone that does get it signed. I mean, you are, you know, solidifying, I guess, your commission check in a way that gives you that protection and kudos to you, but
Yeah.
I don't do it.
Yeah, because it happened to me once where I actually had it signed. I was like, let me try it. I had it signed because these people like I wasn't sure about whatever the case may be. I ended up being right because I even though we went under contract and we closed on the house, they told their attorney, "Oh, I'm going to take care of Josh's commission on the side. Don't pay him." And the attorney actually didn't reach out, didn't say anything. Literally just took the commission out, did and gave it all to the seller, and then the seller
What?
never paid me. I'd never seen
What?
it before in my life. Yep.
That's bizarre. I've never heard of that
It
before.
was absolutely insane. So the seller's attorney literally didn't pay me out of the commission, gave it all to the seller, and then seller said, "No, I'm not going to pay you, and I can't afford to pay you." And I'm like, "All right, well, it is what it is. I'm not even going to fight it at this point."
I didn't even know they could do that, but I had a situation also where I was out with buyers and they said, "Can you believe that our friend was about to work with an agent and then they gave them this form to sign to like lock them into working with them?" And I was like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "No, I'm kidding." I'm like, "That's standard. I just didn't have you guys sign it because like I know you like me and you're not going anywhere else." And then they were like, "I'm giving you his name, like he doesn't want to work with that agent anymore." And that's how I got a referral because somebody felt uncomfortable with the way that the form was presented. It puts people, it backs them into a corner and like they don't fully understand what it means. And if you're not going over line by line, and
Yeah.
even when you do, like there's still a lot of questions regarding the form. So
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky form, and if you don't really know how to explain it and put it in even like not even just explain it, but put it in like normal people terms, you're like,
yeah.
what is this like? No, I need to speak to my attorney about this.
Right, exactly. That's how I would feel if somebody presented it to me. So I just put myself in their position.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so when you said one thing that you just mentioned actually that I wrote down, so I wanted to hit down this. You mentioned a buyer's agent or your showing agent.
Hmm.
So I know a lot of teams, they have almost like designated roles. It's like, you're a showing agent or a buyer's agent specialist, whatever they want to call it. You're one of my, you're a listing agent. Or I guess maybe I don't know if you could be both or in that scenario if you're a buyer's and listing agent, etc.
Hmm.
How do you structure your team in terms of like, do you have certain roles? Is it more just like everyone's a realtor, they do both? Like how are you like kind of mapping it out for yourself
So
and for the team you're
I
working with?
I've really changed the team structure multiple times over the last like 2 years because a lot of it was trial and error. I have some agents that have been with me from the day I started this team, and we've kind of been figuring it out. I don't like giving people an exact designation because it makes them feel like, oh, but I want to work with listings, even though my business is primarily working with buyers. And then they feel like you're labeling them as something that they don't want the label of, or they want to branch into something else, but they don't have the experience yet. So I say to people all the time, like, if I'm going on a listing appointment, who wants to come with me? Who wants to shadow this appointment? With listings, like, I let any agent that's available that weekend who wants to do the open house, you guys collect all the buyers from the open houses. If I get unrepresented buyers calling me, I'll give it to them. Primarily because I'm not here most of the time to work with buyers.
Right.
And I'm still working with the buyers through, like, I'm still guiding my team through that transaction. But with showing agents, we do, pay hourly for that. If like nobody on the team is available, it really depends on the transaction. I feel like everyone is unique. So I will kind of decide when that client comes in what the best fit and like course of action is with my agents for that particular transaction.
No, that makes sense. So because I've been going back and forth about trying to figure out a better route to dish out leads from either an open house or just from, people that call in from a referral that are looking to buyers. Like I very rarely work any of the buyers nowadays. I usually try to give them all to the team. So
Hmm.
I was trying to figure out like what was best because usually we do the same thing like you just mentioned. Anybody wants to come work an open house, you guys work the open house, and the benefit is you guys get to pick all the buyers up that don't have any agents and try to build that relationship with them.
Hmm.
My question is, do you think it would be better if we were to say, take that, you come in to work the open house and you're just coming in to work an open house. Maybe they get paid an hourly fee or something like that to work the open house. And then the leads all get called back by an admin staff or yourself or whatever, however, like you want to work it. And based on what they're looking for in their credentials and the style, the type of phone call you're having, you can kind of get a good vibe of who they would vibe with the best, and then dish it out to that agent specifically as a better chance of potentially closing.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think it definitely adds a lot more steps to the process that I'm trying to avoid. Because I'm like, listen, you were there, you met the client, you built that relationship, you follow up with them. I do think that certain people work well with different personality types, and that's a good way of doing it because then you kind of are setting them up with somebody that they're going to get along with a little bit better.
Exactly.
Um, but I do make it known with my team also, like there's always two people at an open house usually. So I say to them, like, if you're not meshing well with someone, pass it off to the other. Like you're there to tag team and help each other. If you want to split the deal, if you want to, say, take this one, I'll take the next one instead, or something like that. I feel like the team is all really tight knit. Where if we're not working well with a client, we do give it out to somebody else on the team because it's better than it going to an agent somewhere else.
Agreed.
But
And now when that happens, is your team cool with like splitting? Like I don't know how like your guys' structure is or anything of that nature, but say they were splitting it 50-50 on like that lead. Do you see, and then obviously they're paying the broker, they're paying the team split, right, etc. Like, do they ever complain? They're like, okay, well, I'm giving away 50% of this, and the team's listening. I'm like, I'm gonna walk away with like $2,500.
So here's one thing that I'm not good at, right? Like I'm so like reasonable and lenient that like if you came to me separately and we went over the finances, we discussed it and it wasn't making sense, we would make a revision. So I'm not like, listen, you signed this team contract, this is what it is. Like like we were just talking about, there's unique situations where like things can be renegotiated,
Right.
like if you're splitting it with somebody else on the team, there might be a smaller team split. It's not going to be a regular, like it might be 10% to the team. And the thing is, like with my company also, like a lot of us capped out very easily. Like my team has a half cap. They do that right away. So it makes it more of an incentive to work with other people on the team too, because now you're not paying the company anymore.
Right. I believe it's like very similar to the Keller Williams model, also
Yes.
where it's like you pay the cap into Keller, for example, or EXP, for example, and once you hit that number paid into the company, you don't have to pay the company dollar anymore that for the rest of the
Correct.
year, and you're only so you would go to 100% on the team on the company cap,
Yes.
but then you're only responsible for the team split.
Yes. Correct.
Okay, so very similar.
Yeah.
So how have you seen? So this is one of the biggest things I've always come along with because for whatever reason I don't know what the team structures are really like at where you guys are at EXP, but like I hear so many people at Keller, they're like, oh, we put team members at like 50-50s and 60-40s and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, so they're on a 60-40. Okay, maybe they give them a 70-30. I'm like, okay, so they get a 70-30, which is probably like top tier apparently, and they're like, nobody gets that. I'm like, okay. And they're like, then they're at a 70-30 split or so, say with Keller Williams, for example. And, say they got to pay in, I don't know, $12,000 or $13,000, whatever the number is that they have worked out. And I'm like, if you get 70% and then 70% again of like a $10,000 check, you're really getting like $3,500 at the end of the day. You're really at like a
Yeah.
35% split. So to me, I was always like, how do the agents stay long term with a team with doing something like that? Just because I feel like once they start bringing in their own referrals and their own deals, I'm like, they're gonna obviously want to use you for whatever other resources that you're using, but then they're like, okay, then I can't keep getting overall a 35% split. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So I was always trying to find a way that you make less money up front on them, but they get like a better deal. But then long term, they probably never want to leave you. What
Yeah.
what like, what do
Um,
you how do you kind of do things?
I'm so glad you brought this up because I would love to hear how you do it also. But when I was on a team when I first started, this was the biggest issue that I had because it's like, all right, 6 months in, I grew out of this team, right? Like now I'm getting my own clients. I wasn't getting enough resources in exchange for what my split was, and I
Exactly.
was over it. I left the team, and that's the biggest issue with most traditional brokerages and the way that the teams are structured. So when I when I started my team, I found that the best way of doing it, and this is just what worked for me, is that I have a tiered system in terms of team splits. So when you first start on the team, you have a 40% team split, 60-40. We get 40 as the team lead. That goes back into your marketing. That's for all of your resources that are covered, whatever. After you do 2 transactions, you close 2 deals, and that includes your mentorship program too, because at EXP, if you start as a brand new agent with less than 3 deals under your belt, you need to get a mentor. So as a team lead being a certified mentor, they don't need the mentorship program. They join my team, and that's included in that 40% split, which normally they would be paying 20% anyway for, in
Okay.
additional to their
So
company.
they would pay
So,
20% for a mentorship program
right,
automatically, regardless if you're a brand new
right,
agent with less than 3 deals, or since you're
exactly.
certified, you could wrap it into like one package.
Exactly. So
Okay.
instead of the 20% mentorship fee, it's a 40% team split. So really, it's like a 20% mentorship fee, 20% team split. And then once you do 2 deals, you like graduate from the mentorship program. If you're doing it separately with EXP, it's 3 deals, but with me, I make it 2 because I know you know what you're doing after 2 deals with working with me because I'm like on your ass about it. And then after that, you get bumped up to a 30% team split. And after closing 10 deals, then you're on a 25%.
So they would get
So
so you max out at a 75-25.
right. That's the minimum you're allowed to take from a team member at EXP. Once you're like a standard team, there's different types of teams you could have. But that's what I feel like worked the best because number one, you have something to work towards. you have the incentive to get to the 2 deals or get to the 10 deals to have less of a team split. And for me, it's like, okay, you need the most hands-on training at that 40% split. Like, it's not me taking money from you. Like, I have to walk you through every single step of that entire process. And
100%.
then by the time you have done 10 deals, like that 20% split is really mostly towards marketing. Like, we cover all their listing marketing, all of the listing presentations, all of the resources, like anything they would need, door hangers, whatever, all of that's included. So obviously that money has to come from somewhere. But with rentals, we only take 10% and that's it, because it's
That
a
makes sense.
quick and easy, you know.
Right. Do you have like a limit on what they're able to spend for a listing? Like obviously, or is it like a free for all? Like, okay, we're gonna put up your for sale sign. Obviously we're gonna, you're gonna get maybe some direct mailers that you want to send out in the area promoting a new listing, maybe some door knockers, you want to go introduce yourself, whatever it may be. Like, do you say, listen, we have X amount of dollars to spend in marketing? Or are you spending money for like the photographer? Like, do they buy their own photos? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so I cover all of the expenses. It's a little bit of a free for all just because I feel like every listing is different, right? Like, if it's a condo or co-op, we do professional photography for almost every listing. If it's a condo co-op, we're doing floor plans. If it's a hoarder house, we're doing virtually staging or decluttering photos. If it's like a gorgeous listing, we're also doing a listing video. So I don't do the same package for every single listing. I think every house calls for different marketing that it needs. So photography is like the base for all of the listings. And then like there's usually one add-on for everything depending on what the house needs. And then we, get the team together. We get flyers printed. We do door knocking before the open houses and stuff like that.
No, I like that. And I think if, I like it if people my team, nobody wants so many people, like, they won't go that extra mile. They won't go out. They don't do the door knocking. They don't do like that type of. It's like pulling teeth, but then they
Yeah.
want business at the same time. So you're like, well, what are we doing here? But it's like that constant battle with everybody trying to be like, listen, it works, guys. You can't. It's not going to be overnight, but it does work, and it's just getting your name out there more. So doing these things, like, it does work. People don't continually do them. Brian Karp doesn't continually door knock because he wants to do it for fun. He does it because he does 200 freaking transactions a year. Like, so the shit works.
I'm gonna give you my secret sauce that I don't share with people. But what we've been doing that has been really successful is when we go door knocking before an open house, or we'll go like a day or two before the open house, we print something that says like exclusive first look, and we invite all of the neighbors to do a first look of the open house. So if the open house is from 12 to 2, from 11:30 to 12, we invite all the neighbors, because first of all, everyone loves seeing the houses on the block. They're all nosy.
They're all
They want to get
nosy.
ideas on renovations. They want to know how much their home is worth, and that's really going to put you above and a step ahead, because then you met them already door knocking. Now you're meeting them again at the open house. Now most likely they want comps for their place, so now you have a reason to follow up with them and go back and give them something of value. So that's something that's been super productive with our listings.
Yeah, I can see that definitely working. You're almost showing up with like that golden ticket. Bring this
Yeah.
flyer back, and you get like early access to come check it out.
Yeah, it
So
makes them feel special and included, and we get a good turnout from that.
yeah, I've heard. Forgot who told me one time. They were like, it was very similar. Like, they would go and door knock the area, introduce themselves, but they would make it as like, they're not trying to get business. It's more like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm hosting an open house this weekend here. Saturday between like 12 and 3. There may be a lot of extra cars coming through or stuff like that. So if you see a
Yeah.
lot of extra commotion going on, we've been getting a lot of calls on this property, so we're expecting to be a busy turnout. So I just wanted to apologize for the inconvenience. There's going to be a bunch of cars in the area, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of made it seem like I'm just giving you a courtesy. Like, it's going to be busy this weekend over here. And they were kind of going at it like that. It was kind of
Yeah.
interesting.
So I like that, but I feel like in New York, people are like, come on, get to the point. You're not just being nice to tell me there's cars
Right.
on the block. Like, so in other states, I feel like that might work a little bit better. In New York, people know something's up, but they're like, come
It's
on,
so
what are you
true.
really doing here?
No, I do like what you mentioned though about trying to use that as like, hey, listen, everyone's nosy. Everybody wants to be like, oh, that house is for sale. Or even if it's not a new construction house, they're like, oh, I was dying to see what they do, like what
Yeah.
their house looks like. And they're ready to walk right in. And like you said,
Yeah.
then you build that relationship. Are you trying to then get like an email address or something of that nature to put them on some type of drip campaign for the future? Like, what are you guys doing
Yeah.
when you walk in?
Yeah, so we still have them sign in when they come in. We take their email and we let them know we're going to send them like a comp report, and we use RPR on MLS. It prints the whole report. It gives them the neighborhood. It gives them everything in that report where it's pretty hands off. I mean, we adjust the comps a little bit, but
Right.
it pretty much does it for us. And it just gives them value. It shows like, wow, they put together this 33-page packet on our property. And even if they're not thinking of selling right now, like now we have them on an email list. We try to do at least monthly emails out to everybody, which is something we're working on this year because we definitely have to do more. Um, and just building that relationship with them.
Yeah, that's something actually that I started doing this year as well. I started now, so I hired a company that actually helps me with social media stuff, just because it's like a full time job getting
Yeah.
content out there, scheduled, etc. So like I have a company that pretty much will post, they edit all the videos, post, blah blah blah, but they also will get all our ideas together and they'll draft up the newsletter, and we use like Constant Contact, and I'll send out now twice a month emails. So like you could just, it's just like you said, trying to stay top of mind with these people. And it's like, all right, I send them a magazine every other month. Then they get my emails twice a week, twice a month. And, then hopefully they're following us on social media. They're seeing we post 2 times a day across like every platform. So we're like, all right, I'm either going to be in your face so much where you unfollow me, or I'm going to be in your face and you're going to be like, all right, I'm going to use him when the time comes. And you just got to be doing
And
like so many different avenues.
yeah, and that's what it is too. When people unsubscribe to your email, like don't even take it personally because they were never going to buy with you anyway. If they
Right.
like you and they like the content you're putting out, they want to see what you have going on. Like it's not annoying, especially when you target your emails. Like for buyers, you talk about interest rates, something that's relevant to them in particular. So that's what we're working on too, is separating like sellers from buyers so that our emails are more targeted with like information that they will actually appreciate and like
Right.
resonate with. So once it's separated and like on autopilot, it's going to be a lot easier, but we got to get over that hump first.
Yeah, no, it people don't realize there's a lot of behind, all this business, most of this business is behind the scenes stuff of putting
Yeah.
these systems and things in place. Speaking of like systems and doing things like this with your emails and everything like that, are you outsourcing anything? Are you using virtual assistants? Are you using, do you have an in-house assistant? Do you have any cold callers or anything that you guys are doing, or you guys are still boots on the ground trying to get it all done?
Yeah, we have systems in place. We have, so I've been using transaction coordinators for Florida transactions. There's a lot more paperwork.
Yeah.
It's only like $300 a deal, but like they reach out to the title company, like they're doing the in between stuff. They're uploading the documents to SkySlope for us. But in New York, like I don't know, I just do it so easily. I'm like, I don't need a TC for this. Like, give me 5 minutes and I could get it done. So like my team members, I offer it to them and I'm like, after you do your first transaction with the buyer docs and your first transaction with seller docs, if you want a TC, I'll get one for you. Like it's not even I'm paying them hourly or anything like that. It's per transaction. So
Right.
it comes out of the team split. So I just want them to know how to do it before they
Absolutely.
outsource that. Because if they ever want to leave the team, I don't want them handicapped that like they feel
Right.
like they have to stay with me for those reasons. Like I want them to be self-sufficient. So I teach it to them first, have them do it, then we can outsource for TC for paperwork and stuff like that. In terms of marketing stuff, I have a marketing background and I like just like really enjoy doing it. So I also like run social media accounts for some other agents and like all
That's
different
cool.
states. So I kind of do that marketing stuff. Like I put together the newsletter that we email out and stuff like that. We definitely need to make a hire at some point this year, but we kind of just have like our vendor checklist, and like you need a photographer, we have it here. You need an attorney, you have it here. Like we
Right.
have our database of stuff, but other than that, it's pretty boots on the ground, and it's been working for us. It's not like
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
haven't had I haven't had anything this year where I'm like I'm super overwhelmed and I can't handle all of this. But when it gets to that, that's when I'm like, okay, time to outsource.
Right, because you guys are doing in New York roughly how many realtors do you have on the team now?
I have about 7. We have like 3 that are like new, haven't really closed anything yet. But my goal for this year is just for everyone to be producing and
Yeah,
selling
listen,
something.
you're always going to have that. I have 24 agents, and literally 10 of them probably have never done a deal. They just hold their license and they have no interest in doing a deal. they literally got their license and they're like, for the one time, like their friends or family reach out to them, they'll do a transaction. Other than that, they're like, yeah, I'm just, just wanted to have my license for foreseeable future. But then, we have 10, 12 agents that are consistently doing business. So like you're always
Yeah.
going to have those stragglers. But when you guys are doing paperwork, so everybody just throws in their own paperwork, everybody's just kind of like doing their own thing. Do you think when you get, like, for example, how many transactions did like the team do last year, or are you guys on pace for maybe this year?
So we did, oh my God, I have to look at our numbers now. We did probably so far this year, we're already at 10 million in production for the year, I think. We did 4, 6, yeah, we're a little over 10. I think once we get to 20, because we're definitely going to do 15 this year at least. Once we
Yeah,
get over 20 million, I'll start
yeah.
hiring more people.
So we last year was the first year. Last year? No, 2 years. Yeah, about I don't know, maybe just over a year. We have an in-house assistant. She lives in she actually used to work for Keller Williams. They had a falling out. She left, and then I hired her directly for our team because
Oh, awesome.
she knew
That
all
worked
the
out well.
systems. She knew everything. So I'm like, hey, you want to come work for us instead? And she was like, yeah. So I'm like, all right. So like, I wanted to have somebody that wasn't like a virtual assistant for like an actual like assistant, because she could help with transaction coordinating, she could help with all the paperwork. But then come holidays, if we want to pack up a bunch of stuff, she can come into the office and physically help pack things up. Like anniversary cards, she hand writes all our anniversary cards for us, puts like a $10 set for life in there, writes, hey, if you hit big and need to update your house, give me a call, whatever. Like, so I don't have to
I love
remember to
that.
do all these things, right? And so we have her. She's in Queens, but she works remote for us because just to do paperwork. I was like, I don't need you to come sit in the office and sit in an hour of traffic
Right.
each way. When I need you to come to the office because we have a bunch of stuff to do, you'll come in. But other than that, like, she works there. But it's honestly like a game changer in terms of I haven't touched a piece of paperwork in 18 months. And like the team, they just fill out like one little form and of like the about the information about the deal, and she'll draft up everything, put it into Command, which was like, SkySlope, like they have like their thing
Yeah.
where you just upload all your documents. And then she'll email out the attorney introducing herself. I'm the assistant. Anything you need, give me a call. She'll CC you on the email. All the deal sheets, commission bills, everything gets attached, and like it goes out like as a packet. And
Oh,
like
that's awesome.
you're like you literally write, you do nothing, and it just like frees up your time, because I've realized like our time isn't valued in doing paperwork. Like even if it doesn't take
Yeah.
a long time, if it was an hour, whatever, I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, if I could be doing something else that made money in that hour, or if it was just I wanted to hang out with my daughter like for that hour,
Yeah.
like it's just worth whatever the money could potentially cost to have like an assistant do these things. um
Absolutely.
It'll change your life when you try it. You'll be like, how did I not do this sooner? I promise
Yeah.
you. It's
I've
literally
heard
the best
that.
thing ever.
I've heard that. But
Like,
it's so true. And especially after you have kids, like I think that was the biggest thing for me. Like I wanted to, also why I switched companies was just because like I wanted passive income streams. Like I love selling. I'm always gonna sell. But like when it comes to being, there's so many different companies, they all kind of give you the same shit. They do the same thing. Like
yeah,
nobody's hiring a company, they're hiring the agent. But then there's somewhere like you can just earn extra money for doing the same thing you're doing somewhere else. And that frees up my time. So
right.
it's things like that. Like that's the most important when you have kids, is freeing up your time and being able to devote more time to them instead of like sitting in open house for 2 hours for one person to walk through the door, which is not always the case. But like I remember when I
It
first
happens.
started, it was a dead market and I would just sit there. I'm like, I could have been doing so many other things. Like,
I know it makes you double guess some things, and that's something that we started implementing a lot of systems in place. Like last year, we did like, well, I don't know, we average about 125, 140 transactions a year. So we did
nice.
like $80 million last year. So like we're trying to hit like 100 million is the
That's
goal.
awesome.
So, but like it just it goes nuts. Like
Yeah.
you're like I don't feel like I'm super busy. I don't feel like the team is super busy, but like I think it's just then the systems in place just kind of make it seem like you're not busy and you just have
That's
so much
even
time.
better. And that's where a lot of agents get stuck because the busy work, it feels good to do busy work because you're like, wow, I was so productive today.
Right.
But meanwhile, like you could have had somebody else do most of the stuff that you did today. Like you didn't need to be busy today.
Yeah.
Like busy work is not productive work.
100%. And that's somebody. So I started doing that because I started following. I think she's actually one of the biggest like EXP recruits or teams. The hell's her name? Gogo.
Yes.
So I
Yep. She's in
follow.
Michigan and
Yeah.
Florida now.
Right. So she moved to Florida because we were talking a little bit, and then she moved to Florida, and I know she has her team in Michigan, but then her big thing is like her agent attraction. Like she has I don't know 1,000 people in her downline, which is honestly absolutely fucking ridiculous. But like
Yeah.
she basically could retire off of that. And listen, I know it's not like the most people are never going to have something like that. Like Juan, at Gold Bar, like we're never going to have like these
He's
style
sick.
of things. It just doesn't have like that.
Yeah.
You got in at the right time. People, kind of grew into you, and you were able to just explode. Like that's not really going to happen to majority of people. Same thing in my company. There's people making that are people like it goes like you said, thousands of people, but like that's not the norm. So it's like trying to figure out all these different angles or things that you could do to free up time, make more money, and be more passive. Because as much as we love selling real estate, nobody. I mean, maybe some people do, but I know I don't want to be running around at 70 years old having to sell real estate to put food on the table. Like I
Yeah.
want to like enjoy my life at the same time. So it's like,
I
what do you
will
do to
say
get there?
those people you just named are like literally, they basically did retire. Like, were able to take themselves out of production, which is insane. Like, me and Juan are the same age. And when I found that out, I wanted to throw up. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what do you mean you retired at 28? Like, get out of here.
You're fucking nuts.
But he was able to do it. And here's the thing, when you have people at companies that give incentives like Keller Williams or EXP or whatever, and that's why sometimes we get a bad rep because people are like, oh, we recruit, whatever. It's just the opportunity that like you can sell and make this money, or instead of focusing on cold calling, a lot of like Juan in the beginning, he was cold calling other agents to recruit them to the company instead of cold calling for houses. And now look at where that got him, like you laugh at it until you're like, oh shit, he was onto something here. And
I
like,
know, and
what?
it's crazy because I feel like those people got into the company early, and
They
then
did.
as people were coming in, obviously it just kept growing, kind of natural. Like you were calling, but you didn't have to because as more agents came over, like they all stemmed from only a couple people, like at the
Yeah.
top already,
Yeah.
which I feel why a lot of people are now jumping over to like real because it's newer and they're trying to get in at the ground level where like then everybody starts coming in and kind of like adds to like your downline sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see as like these companies are doing what they're doing.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. They got in at a good time, but like even for me, like I don't have that many people in my downline, but still like what I get on my rev share check every month, which is just completely passive. Like it pays for my car, pays my car insurance, it pays like a portion of my mortgage. So like the goal for me is like, all right, just cover all my monthly expenses so I can save all my commission checks and then invest that or do whatever with that,
Absolutely.
go buy a new car.
So obviously, like you're going back and forth. Now you're living in Florida and going back and forth to New York, right?
Yeah.
So when you're here in New York and you're going on like these listing appointments, how are you, kind of explaining to the sellers, like, are they expecting you to be here for open houses? Are they expecting you to be here throughout, the the whole transaction? Like, obviously, I'm assuming you're mentioning that you're going to be there for all negotiations and major things like that. But what has changed in your listing presentation now that you're going back and forth and you're not only here?
I have to be honest, I thought it was going to be more of a hurdle than it actually is. I feel like most people like trust me to be like, I can't take on this job if I wasn't able to. And like they already know the way I work. A lot of my business is like past clients or referrals from past clients that I have some sort of personal relationship with. They follow me on social media. They know I'm not in one state. I'm like constantly back and forth. And they know I have a team of people that can get the job done. So the only thing that really shifted in my listing presentation, I have a team page. I show their faces, their little titles underneath. And I'm like, listen, I pop in and out with listings. These are the people, like, get familiar with them. You're going to be seeing them at open houses and at showings. I make it a point to fly back to New York every time I get a listing for some point in that 3-month transaction process. So either I'll be there for the initial listing presentation. Sometimes I do it over Zoom. Sometimes I just have a phone call with them and then send over the paperwork right after. But at one point in that transaction, I will be there. So whether it's for the first open house or for the inspection or for the closing, at one point they're going to see me through that deal, and then my team will be there for the rest of it. But I'm always on the phone with them. Like, even though I'm not physically there, there is a lot of stuff we can do in the background, and I'm still working on this 100%. I'm just
Right.
not physically at all those appointments. So I still, like you said, I still do all the negotiations. I'm still in the background. I'm still doing all the marketing. I'm still, make supervising the entire transaction. So I have to say I haven't really had anyone that had an issue with that. My first client, I was moving. I told them I was moving. And we were under contract, and then the deal fell through. We had to go back on the market, and they were like, "Can you still do this?" Like, they flat out asked me. They were like, "I trust you to tell me." And I was like, 100% I can still do this. We got a contract in like 3 days. So, and we closed, we're done. So I think it's just a matter of being very straightforward with people. Like, at first I was nervous to tell them and like explain it, but when you say it with confidence that like this is not going to be an issue,
Right.
like this is going to be a seamless process, you're still working with me. They're super comfortable with that. And sometimes I'll bring like a partner to a listing appointment. I'm like, "Listen, this is my partner. Like, you're going to be seeing her or him a lot throughout the process. Like, I want you to build a relationship, get familiar with each other. Like, this is my right hand man." So it's just a matter of being transparent.
And that's what I think is the biggest thing. Like if you tell them up front, hey, listen, like this is my colleague. You're gonna be seeing one of us. You'll be seeing this person a lot, but I will be the only one handling negotiations or anything of that nature. But for showings or open houses, you'll be seeing, both of us, one of us, whatever the case may be. And you're upfront with them from the beginning. They kind of you're setting expectations from day one rather than all of a sudden being like, yeah, I'm gonna be the one for your open houses, etc. And then all of a sudden an open house shows up and they get a different person knocking at the door and they're like, I thought I hired Grace. I didn't know I was getting Josh. Then
Yeah.
you're like, all right, now you set that expectation up from the beginning, and you don't have to really worry about it going forward. As long as they get the deal done, everything gets happy. Like they're going to be fine, and
Yeah,
then
that's what it
communicate.
is. Like, if you're trying to hide it, like, then you can't post anything because they're following you. Then you're afraid to say, like, if they're like, "Can you come here at 3 o'clock?" Like, I got to come up with an excuse. Like, that's not a way to live. Like, you
Yeah,
have to be honest with people, and it will take a load off. You'll feel good about it. They'll feel good about it, and it just builds that trust. And your agents know what. Like, everyone just has to be on the same playing field.
agreed. Now, as your team is growing, are you getting to the point where you're still hiring brand new agents, green, no deals, or are you now looking for deals? Because we're at the point where I'm like, it's so time consuming. They say they want to do all these things. You put all your blood, sweat, and tears into getting them to where they would potentially maybe need to do, get to, and then they just quit. They, work one buyer. They're like, oh, I had to keep driving out. I have to keep driving out east. I have to keep making offers. Like they're lowballing offers. Like I'm not interested, and like they leave. They never do a deal, and like your time is worth whatever it's worth. Hundreds of dollars an hour or whatever it may
Yeah.
be, and so we're at the point where like if brand new agents, unless like you're full time and we see like you actually have potential, like we're not bringing in any like brand new part-time agents anymore. Like we're just past that of like let's focus our time and energy into the ones that like are actually committed to like perform.
Yeah, so it is super frustrating, especially when people come into the business, like we had mentioned in the beginning, with these high, like selling sunset expectations and then don't want to do the work for it. Like, I'm tired of working with those people, but new agents in general, I like, seeing their progress, and I like nurturing that relationship with them. So it's not all new agents. Part-time new agents are an issue a lot of the time. So part-timers, like, it's getting difficult to manage a team of part-time and full-time simultaneously. So that's been a little bit of a hurdle to get over. I do additional meetings with like my brand new agents. Like, we'll do a team meeting every week with everyone, and then the new agents, I have a separate meeting with them. So they are meeting twice a week with like additional trainings and the basics of the business. Um, I think that once you get quicker with firing people, it makes it a little bit easier, because like 3 strikes is even too much. Like, I've had people that showed up to appointments like looking super sloppy, and the client calls me and is like, "This person cannot represent me. Like, I'm embarrassed to I'm
Right.
like, how'd you show up to an appointment? And this one guy was like, oh, I was going to welding school afterwards. I was like, you're in the Upper East Side. Like, what are you talking about? And like that was it. Like you have to there's certain things that are non-negotiables that there's certain things you can't teach people. Like if it's the basics of like showing up on time or letting someone know when you're running late or looking presentable on an appointment or like doing some sketchy shit, like that's it. So I'm not managing people like that. Like that
Right.
takes too much time away from me because that's not stuff you can teach, is to like show up
Yeah,
and be
common sense is like
presentable and
common
on
sense.
time. Right. Like, but when it comes to the business itself, like that I will teach and train you and like help guide you through the process to get into production.
No, that makes sense. It's you got some people like the shit I see sometimes. I'm just like, how do you think that was going to be okay? And like, you didn't like that crossed your mind. You're like, yep, this is how we're
This
going.
is a good idea.
Good idea. I was like,
Yeah, I'm sure we've seen it all. So
I know. So now that you're in Florida, obviously, what are like some of the main differences between Florida real estate and New York real estate that you're seeing, either for the better or for the worse, or things that you're loving better or things that you hate?
well, the biggest difference is like everyone in South Florida has a real estate license, knows somebody with a real estate license. Like I was out at like a kid's birthday party. I'm talking to two parents and one was like interested. I'm like, nice. Like, okay, we got one. Like, and then the other guy chimes in. He's like, I've been licensed for 5 years. I'm like, fuck, I'm talking to two people. Of course, one of them has a license. Like it's everywhere you go. Um, and it's just like even like I have realtor.com leads down there because like I don't know people down there. Like now I'm just like I
You're
am
building.
starting completely from scratch. And like even with realtor.com, like there was one person I didn't get back to within like an hour. They already had another agent. Like that's how quick it was. So you just really, without knowing people, like you're starting from scratch. Like I
Yep.
relocated, I knew one person in the entire state. So like my first listing was my handyman that was painting my house. I started bullshitting with him. I was there for like a day. I just got my license down there and wound up listing his house. I mean, the market down there never slowed down since COVID. Like New York, we kind of stabilized for a while. Now it picked up again and it's super busy, but we had like a down period. Florida has not had that. Like it's still on 100. I just had a listing that sold, oh, I can't tell you because we're under contract, but like we're significantly over asking, and like we had 20 showings in 2 hours. So
Yeah, awesome.
it has been absolutely insane. And the prices are up, the rates are up, but it's a relocation state. So it's not
Yeah.
just the people there that are buying, like it doesn't stabilize ever because you have people coming from like every other state, big from Texas, California, all the northern states that are surrounding New York. Like there's just everybody in my community is from New York or Connecticut or New Jersey or something like that. So that's what I've been tapping into. And I was afraid to because I didn't want people to know I was from New York because I'm like, do they want a Floridian? Like, do they
Right.
feel like I don't know where I am? But once I saw how many people were also from New York, I'm like, let's use that. And so my marketing now says like bringing New York hustle to the Sunshine State. And now I just use that as leverage.
Yeah, it's so the one things or a couple things that I like more about Florida. One, not having an attorney and just being able to write up a legit binder and be like, okay, sign this. I think
I was so afraid in the beginning. I was like, I don't have a legal background. Like, I don't know what any of this is. Like, I was so nervous. And that's what prevented me from getting started sooner down there. Cause like I was like in my head so much. I was like, I don't know anything about this, but it is so not scary. Once you do the
yeah,
first one, you're like, wow, that was it. Like I could have been doing it this whole time. Yeah, I was a little traumatized to work on contracts, but it's so much easier than I thought it was. Once you have the right guidance and you're just asking the right questions, you do it one time and then you're
you're good.
good. But it definitely speeds up the process. I mean, with all cash, you can close in 2 weeks.
Right.
Everything is a 30-day close. In New York, I have 5 things pending right now. Nothing's closing for another 6 months. So it's
Yeah,
like so
that's so
frustrating.
true. The average deal closes in like 30 days, which is awesome. Like
Yeah.
over there, it's like everything's like on or before dates, no on or about. So like it's literally like drop dead, which was a little scary. Like when I bought my house down there, and I'm like, it's like, no, you got to close on this date, or otherwise, like you're gonna beg for them to like extend you, or like, and you have to
Yeah.
like entice them with like money. Oh, give me like an extra week. I'll give you like $2,000. Like I'm closing. I just need an extra like week. like scary at the same time, but things actually move down there. So like I was expecting it like New York, and I'm like, how am I going to close in 30 days? New York takes freaking forever. And there, but
Yeah.
I was like ready to go. Like it was super quick. Um, that's one thing I loved. Another thing I loved was that you go pending under contract before like you even can do your inspection, so you don't have to like fight for somebody like you're going to lose out on your property because you couldn't get your
Yeah.
inspector in there within 24 hours. Like that, I think how real estate should be done pretty much everywhere. Like I think that's probably the best thing ever. Um,
Yeah, there were so many little things that were just so different that I didn't realize until I was going through the transaction. But again, that's stuff that, like, even when you have a team that you can't teach, like, they have to be seeing it firsthand and be on those appointments and, like, going through the whole transaction for them to really process things like that. So, like, the best way to learn is just being active, and you take it one step at a time. If you don't know something, you're going to consult with someone. Like, don't let that hinder you from growing and getting clients.
Agreed. And then last thing, which obviously every realtor should love, New York average commissions like 4%. Maybe you're good enough and you're getting that 5 or 6%. Full deal. But in Florida, the average is probably 5%, and most of them are probably 5 and 6%. So like
Yeah.
you're getting almost like a 25% raise in what you're making for literally doing the same exact job that you're doing here, which is obviously a great thing as well.
And I'm also from Queens. So in Queens, as a buyer's agent, we're really seeing 1%, one and
Oh,
a
it's
half
it's,
percent. Like
uh,
that's standard now,
it's
and it's
brutal.
insane. It's horrible. That's why I was like, I'm out. No, I'm just kidding.
That
But
that is brutal. I wouldn't
it's
honestly,
so low.
and the people there are like, there's no ethics that in Queens or like at all. Like we do like Oregon Park listings and stuff. These people, like even the buyers, oh, they'll tell you right up front, I've been working with this realtor for 6 months. You put the offer in. I want you to put the offer in. Just get me an accepted offer. I'm like, these people are like crazy.
Yeah. No, I've seen a lot, and listen, we can only be as ethical as we can't control everyone else, but I've seen a lot. But I sold a $1.1 million house in Queens. It was only a 1% buyer's commission. So I'm like, all right, that's nice. But what are you gonna do? I mean, you can't control it unless you're the one taking the listing. Otherwise, it kind of is what it is. It's hard to ask your buyer to come up with a difference in commission so you can get paid what you're supposed to. But yeah, in Florida, it's standard 6%. You're getting 3% on a buyer deal. 2.5 is really like the lowest. I mean, I've seen two here and there, but that's like far and few between.
Right. Yeah. It's Queens. I don't know how people like 1.5% is just wild. That has
Yeah.
become the norm for Queens. Like not even two. If you see a two, you're like, holy shit! Like this is like
Yeah.
it's
And
wild.
that's why you're gonna be like, oh, another one. But like I started working more in Long Island than Queens because the commissions were higher. And I'm like, why would I, the houses in Queens are slightly more money, but you're making a lot less commission. So a
Yep.
lot of agents are focusing on Long Island. All the Long Island agents are complaining that we're like gravitating out that way. So I apologize in advance, but but it is what it is. I mean, it's hard. I mean, and then you have Manhattan and Brooklyn where they're still getting six,
Right.
5%. So we also try to work out there a little bit more. But that's what I was concerned with going to Florida. I'm like, oh, the prices are lower, but you're making more money on those lower. So your production number is less, but your GCI is higher.
Right.
So
That's all that
it's
matters.
yeah, exactly. Whatever you're ending up with is really the most important part, in my opinion.
Agreed.
You got to live, right?
Yeah, listen, that's why I tell people here, like, listen, if you could get 3% for your listing side or whatever, even on your buyer side sometimes, and instead of getting that 2%, you're doing 1.5 deals every time instead of, you know, just your one deal. I could literally do 5 deals. It's going to take you 7 deals, 8 deals to do the same amount of
Yeah,
business. So you're like, work smarter, not harder. Make more as much as you can per transaction, show your value, and you won't have a problem with it.
exactly.
you know so last question, I always like to end off on this one. What is Grace's 5-year plan? Where does she want to
Uh,
see yourself, the team? What is the goals for the next 5 years?
I have to be honest, and this is like so the opposite of what I feel like most agents do, but I don't like setting goals. I feel like it limits you. I feel like you're putting yourself in a box and then it hinders your growth. And like I've done so much in the last 3 years that I just would have never expected to be doing. I wouldn't expect to have a team. I wouldn't expect to go back and forth in 2 states and have two, sustainable businesses and all these agents working with me. And I have no idea where I'm going to be in the next 5 years. Like, I could paint all these pictures, but like, I really don't know where it's going to end up going. I mean, I definitely want to build out Florida, and I want to have a team of agents that are like self-sufficient and know what they're doing and are really, really good at their job, because we're in an overly saturated industry where it's like a free for all and it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
And I just hate that connotation, and I want to do everything I can to change it. But I really don't know. That's I'm going to sit with this after that, but I don't have a good answer for you now.